Peter Pan is arguably one of Disney's best films, but there are some dark things behind the story that you may not have known. Stay tuned to find out why Peter Pan may not be the good guy you thought he was. New around here? Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to The Things for more great content like this. Now onto 10 dark secrets in Peter Pan Disney doesn't want you to know. Changing stories. Kids aren't really big fans of change, are they? That's why whenever they have to change schools or a new baby comes into the family, there are usually some big issues that come up. But with Disney films, kids usually don't have to worry about change. The films start out the same way every time. But Peter Pan wasn't always so reliable. In fact, the film actually started out as a play. Then it was turned into a novel in 1911 called Peter and Wendy. The play first opened in London in 1904. The weird thing about the story, though, was that it was always changing. Its creator, J.M. Barrie, was always updating it. The script changed every year. The version of the story that we've all seen is the one from the late 1950s, early 1960s. Can you imagine if Disney movies changed like that? Part of the appeal of them is that you can watch them when you're young and then come back when you're older and still get the same joy and excitement out of the storyline that you had when you were a kid. If the story changed every year, we wouldn't feel nearly the same amount of joy that we do now. The movies would never be classics because classics don't change. Fairy dust. You'd never think of Peter Pan as being a movie that is not safe for kids to watch. The whole object of the movie is to be a kid forever, so of course, the movie has to be okay for kids to watch. Unfortunately, that wasn't always true. In fact, the original story of Peter Pan was actually a bit of a health hazard for children. Don't know what we're talking about? Okay, let's break it down. So in the original versions of the story, Peter Pan and the Lost Boys could fly on their own. This caused kids who knew the story to try their own hand at flying. There were reports popping up everywhere of kids jumping from their beds and trying to fly. Of course, all these kids soon learned that they could not fly, but not before they were left with injuries. To combat this, J.M. Barrie added fairy dust to the story. In the newer versions of the tale, fairy dust is a necessary component of flying. This made the story much safer for kids to watch. Since no kids had their own little fairy or fairy dust lying around, there were way fewer injuries after this element was added to the story. The Lost Boys. When watching the film, you probably thought how great it would be to be a lost boy, to never have to grow up, to stay young and have fun forever. But that eternal youthfulness may not have been all that it seemed. In fact, there is one line in the story that people tend to just skip over. But this one line shows what might be a horrible, horrible truth going on behind the scenes. The line in the story says, "The boys on the island vary, of course in numbers, according as they get hurt and so on. And when they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out. But at this time, there were 6 of them, counting the twins as 2. Did you hear that? When they start to age, Peter thins them out, as in Peter gets rid of them. Some users on Reddit have suggested that the way Peter gets rid of the Lost Boys is by dropping them over crocodile-infested waters, which is pretty morbid and not really something we want to spend too much time dwelling on. We just can't believe that Peter Pan may be a murderer, but it is right there in the line of the story. Of course, Disney didn't include that in the film. Hating adults. Okay, so we all know that Peter Pan was obsessed with staying young forever, which in itself is a little creepy. He probably should have been seeing a therapist to work out his issues of never wanting to age. Anyway, Peter's fear and disdain of growing older may have caused him to actually hate adults. And we don't mean in the normal I don't like adults because they have too many rules way. We mean like really hate them. There is a line in the story that reads, "As soon as he got inside his tree, he breathed intentionally quick, short breaths at the rate of about 5 to a second. He did this because there is a saying in the Neverland that every time you breathe, a grown-up dies, and Peter was killing them off vindictively as fast as possible." See, Peter was kind of evil. Even if you don't like adults, you shouldn't be out to get rid of them all. What kind of horrible person does that? Peter, apparently. We definitely see why Disney left this part of the story out. We can't imagine that parents would have allowed their children to watch the film if that part had been included. Stealing boys. The author of the Peter Pan story may have actually been a much darker version of Peter Pan in real life. Why? Because apparently he stole his own crew of lost boys. Basically what J.M. Barrie did was manipulate his way into the lives of 2 people named Sylvia and Arthur Llewellyn Davies. The Davies had 3 children, George, Jack, and Peter. Throughout the lives of the kids, J.M. spent lots of money on gifts for the family and would spend lots of time playing with the boys, having fun in the park and making up stories. Later, Arthur and Sylvia both died of of cancer within a 3-year time span of each other. When this happened, Barry took guardianship of the boys. The real kicker is that he forged Sylvia's will so that he could take custody of the kids. None of the children's actual relatives ever objected to him taking the children. Years later, once Peter had grown up, he said that the whole thing with Barry taking custody of him and his brothers was the most pathetic and ludicrous thing that someone could have done. Either this is an extremely sad tale or a very creepy one. Perhaps JM really did want the best for the kids, but forging a will and lying is not the way to go about it. Relationship to Michael. Okay, we may have to take back what we said about JM maybe wanting what was best for the boys, because when you look deeper into the story, the whole thing just gets creepier and creepier. JM really loved taking pictures of two of the boys, Michael and George. Sometimes they would be wearing costumes that he made, and sometimes they would be wearing no clothes at all. If a grown man stole children and then was always taking pictures of them today, that would have raised several flags. But for some reason, no one really seemed to be concerned. He even wrote about his weird relationship with the boys in this book, The Little White Bird. Even though the book described him doing some weird things, it was really popular when it was published. To make matters worse, in June of 1908, JM wrote a letter to Michael for his 8th birthday that was so creepy it gives us chills. It said, "I wish I could be with you and your candles. You can look on me as one of your candles, the one that burns badly. Dear Michael, I am very fond of you, but don't tell anybody." Gross. Never loving. J.M. Barrie did get married. Maybe you're thinking that after his marriage, he, the boys, and his wife were one big happy family. But that isn't the case at all. In fact, J.M. may have never even loved his wife at all. His wife, Mary Ansell, once wrote, "Love in its fullest sense could never be felt by him or experienced." Isn't that horrible? Can you imagine being married to a man who could never feel love? I wonder what made her marry him in the first place. It is also wildly believed that J.M. was unable to have children, which may have been part of why he felt he needed to steal some. Eventually, Mary grew tired of being unloved by her husband and sought affection somewhere else. She ended up having an affair with one of her husband's friends, which led to their divorce. Disney doesn't tell you this morbid backstory about the creator of their beloved film. There have been movies about J.M. Barrie, and most of this stuff is left out. He is painted as quite a kind man, and not at all someone who is unable to love as his former wife Mary thought. Everyone left. Okay, this is the last one about J.M. Barrie. We just had to point this out. If you're on the fence about the character of the creator of the play, consider this. Everyone left him. When George and Peter were old enough, they both volunteered to serve in World War I. Many said that this was the boys' way of getting away from J.M. Sadly, George passed away in the war while he was in Belgium. He was only 21. When Michael was 21, he passed away as well. But in this case, he took his own life. He drowned himself in the River Thames. Peter, the last surviving adoptive son of J.M., also took his own life. He passed away at 63 when he stepped in front of a train. Before he passed away, he destroyed most of the letters that his adopted father had written to him and his brothers. He said that the letters were simply too much. Taking all of these things into account, you can see that the real story behind Peter Pan is really tragic. That's probably why Disney tried to sweep it under the rug. Who would allow their children to watch a movie created by such a strange and possibly horrible man? The original story. In the original story of Peter Pan, he was only a week-old baby when he left home, and he never aged past that. In the story, Peter thought that his mother would always love him and always would leave a window open for him to return. Because he wasn't worried about losing his mother's affection, he spent all of his time playing with the fairies and the birds and never worried about going back home. The problem is that while Peter is away, time is still clicking forward. When he finally does decide to go back home, he's too late. His mother has barred the windows so that he can no longer enter. And to make matters worse, she has a new baby. Peter then believes that his mother's love was not unconditional, as he once thought, and he'd been replaced. When you view the story like this, it's quite sad. No one wants to believe that their mother could just get over them and move on. No one wants to believe that if they play outside for just a bit too long, that maybe when they come back, their mother will have a new baby. Maybe that's why Disney added all those frills and feel-good moments to the story, so that people could come away from the movie feeling good and not depressed. Peter Pan is the villain. In both the book and the play, Peter Pan has no problem with murdering people. He does so to the pirates pretty easily, and then as we mentioned earlier, he may have also been doing the same to the Lost Boys who got too old. In the book, he also alters the bodies of the Lost Boys so they can all fit through the tree holes to get to their underground dwellings. How he alters their bodies isn't really specified, but we can only think that he's probably cutting off things or breaking things so they can fit into smaller places. Another thing that makes him a villain villain is that he can't tell the difference between what's real and what's fake. Sometimes he gives the Lost Boys pretend meals and then won't believe them when they say they're still hungry. In addition to this, the Lost Boys are always in serious danger in the play and the book, but instead of being concerned for them, Peter usually finds the danger entertaining. He always saves the boys, but he doesn't save them because he loves them. He does it so that he can have a chance to save them again and show off how clever he is. Isn't that just a little bit irritating? That's it for 10 dark secrets in Peter Pan Disney doesn't want you to know. Were you surprised by any of these secrets? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching!